Good afternoon. I'm John Duffy. I'm the host of Live Courageously podcast show. And this is a special and an unusual show, and a show that I wish that I wasn't doing. And I wish the woman who I'm about to introduce, Joe Collins, wasn't my guest today, because it's something that you never want to happen in your life. And Joe is going to share a story of her daughter, Bethany Collins Buckles, who has been missing since November of 2021. And Joe, welcome to the show. I'm never at a loss of words, but I'm kind of stumbling on my words, because this is such a, for you, it's got to be a horrible situation. Why don't you share with the audience what happened and your story, and then we'll go a little bit further about your daughter and how you discovered that she was missing.
Okay. Like I guess many other people that this sort of thing happens to, you don't ever think that it's really going to happen to you. You can't imagine it happening, that you have a child go missing. And whether they're 4 or 40, it's still your child. In November of 2021, my daughter and I were making long distance arrangements for Thanksgiving, because I lived in Atlanta and she lived in Asheville. And it was easier for me to order the food in Asheville than to all pack it up from Atlanta and drive it up there. And so I talked to her about 9:30 on Thursday night. She was supposed to call me back the next day to make arrangements for the time she was going to pick up the food order while I was driving to Asheville. And I could not reach her the next day, and she never called me back. Now, we texted most of the time, texted or called every single day. So when I hadn't heard from her in 24 hours, I knew something was wrong. On Friday, I asked the police to do a wellness check at her place, and they saw no sign of her or her car. And on Saturday, I filed a missing persons report with the Asheville police, and drove up to Asheville and had to hire a blacksmith. I mean, not a blacksmith, a locksmith, to get into her condo, and saw that her little dog was still there, which meant the dog had been there Thursday, Friday, and then all of Saturday by himself. And I knew then that something terrible had happened, because she would have never left that little dog there unattended for 3 days. Never. And he was just frantic for somebody to get in there. And I knew that something was not right at all. The Asheville police did, the detectives, the major case detectives did a search of her condo with a search warrant in January, and they located her car in February. From the time that I talked to her on that Thursday night, there's been no use of her bank cards, her social media, her cell phone, nothing. Now, of course, the police did a dump on her cell phone, and they got all that information. And they know that the last ping on her phone was on the 19th, in the area of the far north end of Warren Wilson Road in Swannanoa, North Carolina, which is a kind of suburb of Asheville. And her car was found about 10 miles from that last ping in a grocery store parking lot. They did, the car is still in the forensic garage, and they did a thorough search of it and did turn up some additional leads through DNA and so forth. But that was all very, very slow, because it all had to be sent to the state crime lab, which was, backed up on all of their business. And state crime lab would only let them send like 5 items at a time. So it took quite a while to get all of the car processed. And the police were very good about staying in touch with me, very good. And I know that they have interviewed lots and lots of people and have what I think they call on TV 2 murder books of all the evidence that they have collected, and have interviewed, the detective estimated maybe well over 50 people, probably more like 75 people that they have interviewed. And they have all acknowledged knowing Beth, but all claim to know nothing about what happened to her. And this is the puzzling thing to me, because she had people up there who knew her, and they weren't willing to come forth and say anything. Well, in the meantime, I'd been driving back and forth from Atlanta to Asheville all this time, and decided, well, I'm just going to have to move up there and see if I can get on top of this and do something myself. So I moved to Asheville, and I I'd lived in Georgia all my life. I'd lived in Atlanta all my life, and this was a big move. But my daughter needs to come home, and she needs to come home to her family. Her father died when she was 11, and I know that what she would want would be for her to be restored to her family, and to be her bones to be buried where her dad is. And
Well, I can hear obviously the, I guess, resignation as to what possibly has happened to her in your voice and in what you're saying. Bethany, or Beth, as you called her, was 47 years old at the time in November, right? And she was 5'6" and had blonde hair. And we're going to put up a missing poster at the end of the show, but um, for you were planning Thanksgiving, and of all things, that connection, it's somebody who you love deeply, and yet people knew her in this town. In Nashville, from what I've researched, is a small town. It's not tiny. It's 90,000 people. It has some crime, maybe more than some big cities, and then less than other big cities, more than, as far as statistic wise, a little bit more than New York. So it does have its issues with crime and potentially people who commit criminal activities. So, as to what happened, like you said, the police department has done a fairly thorough job of doing, the detective department of Asheville, and they've done a pretty thorough job. But it isn't easy when, and we don't know what happened or if it happened, but if a crime's committed, it's hard to get people to talk, especially people who may be somehow, either involved with it, that or in the periphery of it. People tend to not like to talk to police, people who are in that kind of environment. So it's a tough job to find out. And you can't. So you stepped up and you moved to Asheville to search for your daughter because of your love of her, and you also hired private investigators, and you've done whatever you can. Tell us a little bit about that if you can, and once again, how do you go further?
well, as time has gone by, some of the people that the police originally talked to have disappeared.
Mm.
Some of them had disappeared rather suddenly from the Asheville area after Beth did. And I think probably those people are the ones who might have been frightened by what they saw, but they know something. And I really wish that they would step forward. I would be so glad to know just anything about where to look for her. Um, Even if I never find out what happened to her, I certainly want to get her back and to not worry about. I mean, it's a strange thing when you lose somebody like that, even though they may be in a snowdrift somewhere. You start thinking about, well, how do I get a blanket to this person? Even when that person might is, you don't need a blanket when you're deceased, but um, you need to know where they are so that you can have that question mark, this enormous question mark that you have to live with, um, removed from it. So um, the private detective and so forth, they really didn't turn up anything new
Mm.
that the that the police had not turned up. And some of it may be because they were unable to interview some of the people who had disappeared or moved out of the area or made themselves scarce.
Well, one of the reasons we're doing this, and one of the reasons that we're having this conversation, was to potentially take this and to see if we can share it in Asheville and share it in North Carolina on whether podcasts or media or in whatever fashion or form, to see if it could reach somebody. And, because you clearly haven't given up hope, and you haven't given up the desire to find out what happened to it, to have a return to your family, as you say. And living with that, not knowing, it's bad enough, losing your daughter in whatever way or where she is, or whatever happened, but not knowing, is something that, is just kind of eats at you. And you're not giving up. And that's why we're doing this today, is to see, it's just one more thing. Maybe it's a pebble into the water, and maybe somebody will hear it. Maybe there's a voice out there. Maybe there's somebody who can call the police anonymously. It doesn't have to be somebody who's willing to step up and tell the story or risk whatever may be involved that they were involved in, but somebody who can call anonymously and report that, yes, they saw this, they saw that, or something that could, give the police another lead to go a little bit further with this investigation that they've spent a lot of time on. So tell us a little bit about that. Well, we're going to, put up the poster and go a little further, but, what would help at this point? What can people do? And I mean, I'm just kind of struggling to try and find a way to say, what can we do to help? Because obviously you deserve to get your daughter back.
The Asheville police have an app, and the app has a menu item for anonymous tips. So that can be done completely without a phone call. You can just go online and use the Asheville app to do anonymous tips. So that's an easy thing to do. Another thing that might be mentioned about this is that Beth was a person who had some mental health problems. And whatever it was that happened could have been because somebody took advantage of her. It could have been because she wasn't using good judgment. I mean, there could have been a lot of reasons for something to happen to her that maybe were not at the hand of another person. So if somebody happened to be with her and they know what happened, but they were also witnessing somebody who was having a mental health crisis, then they shouldn't be afraid to step forward and say, well, I knew she was in this kind of situation, but I didn't know how to help her. And
right.
They could still step forward and tell us what happened without having to explain necessarily what else was going on.
And once again, what you just suggested is that there's a way to do that anonymously to the police department. So if that was the case, and that somebody was in that situation with her and obviously doesn't want to get implicated in whatever was going on at that time, there's still a way to do the right thing and not take a risk themselves just by stepping up and reporting anonymously, so that way they can go further to at least find out what happened and return it to you. So, there's no, that's how you can step up if you were anywhere involved, or you heard the story secondhand from somebody who was there, or third hand from somebody who was there, who told you that this is what happened, and you weren't there, but you heard it from them, or you heard it from somebody who was a friend of theirs. You can still call anonymously and share what you know to the best of your knowledge, because it'll be information that might lead to a resolution that would help bring some peace to you, Joe. So I think that's something that, people can do. No one's saying step up and put yourself at risk, because people won't do that. But there's a way to do it the other way.
Yes. And even second or third hand, even if they're not sure that they know what they know, we just need something to go on. something to go on. It might be the most insignificant detail that you know, but it might be something that would be very important in connecting to another detail to move us in the direction of at least finding her and bringing her home. Lots of people ask me, friends and former colleagues from my work days and family back in Georgia, and it's difficult to talk about it sometimes, but I'd rather talk about it than not talk about it.
Mm.
And I would like to be able to tell people, well, yeah, we're going to be able to bring Beth home. At least we'll be able to bring Beth back to Georgia and put her. There really is a family plot back in Georgia, and at least return her, put her to rest with the other folks in the family plot. It would be such a comfort to the family, and somebody out there knows something. You may not even know that you know what you know, but if you can just share whatever little detail you have about where you might have seen her, who you might have seen her with, and it might not even have been that the people she was with caused anything to happen, but by knowing where there's some living people who knew where she was, maybe those living people can at least tell us where she went from that point. Because we've got a lot of information, but none of it is connecting together. And for the family, certainly the most important thing is to find her.
Well, you're somebody who, and I know this from, the connection that had me bring you on the show, that you're somebody who has served as a teacher for most of your life. So you've been an educator. You've been somebody who cared for people, and then of course cared and loved your own daughter. And so, you've lived a life of helping others. And so, to be that person who's done that and lived a whole life of service in the way you have, and then to, like you just said, to be courageous enough to, it's hard to talk about it, but it's hard not to talk about it. And, you feel that it's better to keep talking about it, to try to find this a little bit of hope, a glimmer of hope, somebody somewhere that might be able to, turn this around and give you that peace that you more than deserve. I'm going to put up the missing person poster of your daughter for a second. I'll put it up at the end as well, but I just want to put it up now if you don't mind. And this is the thing. This is the number for the Asheville. So this is Bethany Collins Buckles, and that's a picture of her. And like I said, she's 47 years old at the time, 5'6", blonde hair. And the phone number for the police department is 828-252-1110. And then, of course, as Joe just explained to us, there's also an app that you can use that will make it an anonymous ability to reach the department and make an anonymous tip to the police hotline so that they can go further. The detectives can go further with this. I don't know if there's other ways that people can help. If there's students out there in Asheville, whether they're journalist students, or there's people I know in Asheville that have podcast shows that deal with missing people, and it isn't like a lot of missing people in the town of Asheville or murders that we know of, but there's enough. And so, if there is other podcast shows on, maybe in Asheville and in North Carolina, they potentially can bring you on the show as well. Because the more people that potentially hear it, all you're looking for is one person that may have that little bit of information that's going to take the police detectives the ability to come to a resolution for you and go a little bit further with you. So that's the only other thing that I can hope and pray that somehow this finds that one person that can help you, because you're not giving up, and your love of your daughter, comes across, and you're just asking people, one person, to step up and do the right thing.
Yeah, and I'm not going to give up. I will not give up. So if somebody is out there thinking that it'll just go away, it's not. I will stay as long as I can to stir the pot. Of course, I'm 75. And I don't want to leave this earth not knowing where my daughter is. So I feel some urgency behind it because, I have no idea how much time I have left on the earth, but I'm going to spend it looking for my daughter. So I won't give up. No.
Well, I commend you for that love of your daughter, that courage that you have, that willingness to not give up, because you just got to keep trying. You got to have that hope. You got to have that you deserve a resolution, and you deserve somehow to get this somebody to step up. So I hope that this makes a little bit of a drop in the a pebble in the water, that maybe will reach somebody. I hope and I pray that you get that resolution, because I know when I was asked to bring you on the show, I never expected to have this kind of conversation with anybody in my life, nor did I want to have this conversation with anybody. But what I heard about you and your passion, and your desire to find this resolution, I felt like I had to do it, and I had to bring you on and say, I don't know, it's in God's hands, and hopefully, this will contribute to somehow that come into fruition for you, Joe. Once again, anything else you would like to say and tell people as we kind of finish it up, and a call to action, and then I'll just close out at the end.
Well, I hope everyone will continue to consider how much we need better mental health treatment available for everybody who needs it in the United States. My daughter struggled a long time with her mental health. And it's very painful to watch. Very painful. That's her little dog you hear making noise over here. I'm sorry. But he had to have a home after she disappeared. And so
Well, he also has a voice, and I think he's sharing that voice.
But I thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. And on that note about mental health, there's organizations. I did an interview with an organization called Give an Hour, which is to provide mental health to people and ask people to volunteer to give an hour to people with mental health. And, that's the thing to realize. People who have mental health issues, like your daughter, are deserving of love, compassion, support, and help. And, obviously you gave it through her, to her through her life. But, we all can do more and contribute more. But, right now, I think more importantly is if anybody can potentially just hear this and share it. And that's the other thing. If you see this, share it, especially in North Carolina, and maybe even outside of North Carolina, because like you said, the person might have left North Carolina. So even outside of the borders of North Carolina. And if somebody would just make that call, be that anonymous tipster, and potentially do the right thing, maybe even for the first time in their life, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, it would. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, Joe. All I can say is may God bless you and keep you strong as you continue to fight and you continue to spread the word. And I will share this, and I hope that we can find a way to reach out and find a way to get a conclusion for you.
Thank you very much, John.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.